All right, what up, everyone? We're gonna go over some CES and gaming IP. We're gonna go over some Blizzard and some other associates. Gonna talk about future of gaming, basically. So let's get into it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to CES 2025. I'm Nagin Elazari, an agent at United Talent Agency, and I will be your MC for today's Storyteller Sessions. We have an incredible day of programming ahead of us, featuring conversations on gaming to measurement and AI in the real world. Our first session starts now. We will hear from Monica Austin, CMO of Blizzard Entertainment, and Femi Okusanya, head of studio at Fourth Frame Studios, for a conversation on the future of gaming IP.
A little bit of claps.
How you doing?
Hi.
You
I'm
good?
How's
How's everybody doing today? Good?
kicking it off?
Right on.
Good group.
Like she said, my name is Femi Okusanya, just Femi for short. I'm head of Fourth Frame Studios. We're a production company rooted in gaming and youth culture. We work with brands, we work with talent, we work with clients, etc., to create compelling, bespoke content for YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, etc., with a focus on gaming and youth culture. So excited to talk with Monica today. Monica, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah. Thank you. I'm so glad you allow us to call you Femi. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Monica Austin, I'm the CMO of Blizzard Entertainment. Blizzard is a gaming company. I get the great privilege of working across game franchises like World of Warcraft, Diablo, Overwatch, and StarCraft.
Nice. So I think Monica and we chatted a little bit before this, and we have similar experiences in that we come from outside of gaming. We bring these kind of new, fresh ideas and experiences into the space. And I know formerly you were at Calm and Linktree and done some amazing things at Netflix. So can you maybe talk a little bit about your past experiences and what those things are doing and how you're taking that and bringing it into gaming?
For sure. I'd say most of my career is really spent in entertainment and tech. I've always been really passionate about the intersection of consumers and storytelling. And I'd say, one of my favorite books growing up was Curious George. So I've always been really excited about new mediums and ways to jump in. For instance, before I was at Netflix, I was at Meta at the time, Facebook, Instagram. And I left the studio business and as a sort of SVP at the studio level, and everyone's like, going to Facebook? Why on earth, in 2016, I think it was 2015, would you go to Facebook, right? And what I just saw was this is where consumers are, this is where the industry is going, and really the cross-section of Silicon Valley, especially with the creative industry, was just a powerful opportunity. And so my career, has really been defined by those cross-sections. And the opportunity at Blizzard, I just think was such too good of an opportunity to turn down. I've always been a gamer. Grew up, I think I was telling you, I remember the first time I opened Nintendo. Growing up, my first big Christmas present. I can feel that excitement that I had, and my brothers and I playing for hours and hours and hours, and always played. There were times in my career where I almost went into gaming, but kind of went more traditional entertainment. And so the idea that I would get to work on these incredible franchises in this incredible industry that's really dynamic and
Blizzard
changing,
is pretty big.
Was just couldn't turn it down, couldn't say no.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. No, I remember our first PlayStation. I remember being at the YMCA and playing Tony Hawk Pro
We're
Skater
going past this.
at Blizzard. What are some of the big things that Blizzard is doing with the IP and some of the great titles that you guys have? Warcraft, Diablo, etc.
I know it's a really fun time to be at Blizzard and to be working on these games. For instance, you mentioned World of Warcraft. It just had its 20th anniversary, the World of Warcraft. Warcraft itself had its 30th anniversary. We've reached a 250 million players with that game in particular. And so you think about also the current players that we have, how do we think about the next 20 years? And so, I think Blizzard in particular was a first studio to really embrace community in a way that was at the time revolutionary. BlizzCon, as an example, was absolutely defining in terms of the way to build community and engagement, and was for many
That's
years in the
insane.
industry. And so we want to think about what is a modern version of building community back in. And so for Warcraft, as an example, we did our first kind of, we called it Warcraft Direct, where it was a 20th anniversary celebration where we did a live stream with these packages from the devs, and we talked about the entire now franchise of Warcraft. So it's the original Warcraft game, it's World of Warcraft, it's Hearthstone, which is our card game, it's also Rumble. And we saw from that not only incredible concurrent viewership and engagement, which we expected to see, but we also saw immense return to the game. People really responded to the fact that we were as deeply invested today as we were 20 years ago in continuing these games. And here's a peek at what's happening, and also, special drops and things like that. And so I'd say, community is probably, from a marketing lens and also from a Blizzard overall lens, is probably the biggest area of opportunity that we're continuing to explore for all of our IP. You mentioned also we just had a big launch for Diablo, which was a Vessel of Hatred expansion. And one of the things that we did this last round is we create such deep connection to our creators and our influencers that we wanted to take that loop a little bit even further. And so, as you just mentioned, we brought a handful of folks to campus. And we said, take a look at the game before we even did pre-sale, pre-reg, and give us your feedback, right? And go deep and tell us what's working and not working. And we actually, sat for 2 days and put that together and made meaningful change to the game. And so I think, Blizzard, we're always looking at ways to think differently and go about these challenges differently, because, there's the next 20 years is going to look very different than the first 20 years.
No, very much so. And I think it kind of also helps dictate where Blizzard shows up, especially on these platforms like YouTube and Instagram and TikTok, et cetera. You have communities that are on these different platforms and engage with the IP and engage with your brand in many different ways. How is Blizzard showing up on these platforms 2025 and moving forward?
Yes. So this is I just joined, just so for background, I joined Blizzard about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
This was probably my number one question, which was, where are our players spending their time? Where's our community, right? And one of the things we saw consistently through the research was their video platforms are where they're not only spending their time, but that's where they're getting their news, their information, their updates, right? And if I looked at our landscape of where we were investing our resources, it was probably not as high up as it should be. Though we've done a lot in the past there, YouTube has certainly been a big platform for us from an advertising standpoint. From an organic content standpoint, it's really important to me that we are really invested into those platforms.
Yeah.
TikTok as well, right? TikTok, I would say, is on par with YouTube with a different category of gamers, with younger players. And we want to be in those spaces as well, having really
TikTok, that's
organic and
different.
authentic conversations with them in the way that they also want to
I did not know that.
content, right? And that's the nuance with all of these platforms. And so you're going to see really deep investment there from us,
So like they're paying attention to Gen Z, the majority of players of where they're located, and that's what they were saying in the beginning, and the platforms in which people are streaming and or playing this game on. So TikTok is a big streaming platform apparently, or recording platform for this.
ongoing, not just for our big expansions, which makes sense, right? Big promo, we have pre-reg, we're going to go out and talk about what's coming up. These are big moments for us to go after, lapsed players, to re-engage our community and our audience, talk about these great, kind of new launches that we have. But we also need to invest a lot of time there with evergreen content.
Yeah.
Right. And keep our brand and the IP fresh and relevant kind of at all times with different types of storytelling.
Yeah, I was on Blizzard's YouTube channel recently, and I've seen long form documentaries. I've seen short cinematic trailers to the things that you guys are creating. Is that stuff done in house? Do you guys have a creative team that you're constantly developing these ideas? Is it the community saying, "Hey, this is what we want to see. We want to see a deep dive with the devs on World of Warcraft or a different game"? How do you guys come up with ideas for what you're going to be doing on the platforms?
Yeah, to answer your first question, we do. We have an in-house creative team that we built that almost functions in kind of two capacities. One, it's almost an agency for us, right? Where the nature of these games, having such immense franchises and the consistency of beats that we have, it's almost impossible to work with outside vendors at that rate consistently. We do it obviously for the big expansions, but from an ongoing standpoint, we needed a really robust creative team that could operate and crank out great content, good ideas, really connect with our community and our players to understand what would resonate. So I'd say the way that we engage is on a handful of things. Think about it like a content ecosystem, right? So we are working on expansion content, trailers, patch notes, things that obviously our community wants to understand. What's the game about? What's coming up? What are you fixing? Then we're also working with creators and influencers to connect to their audiences, their players, or their viewers and fans in ways that are really authentic to the ways that they're playing the game.
Right.
And then we're looking at ways to think about branded content, as in documentaries, UGC, ways to go deeper on lore and characters that we don't typically get to do across the board.
Yeah.
Smart.
There's a certain level
Even, opportunity to go further.
marketing something.
There we go.
And so I think it's way across the internet.
And it makes sense for the world that you're building too, right? It doesn't have to be so on the nose in terms of marketing something, especially to the gaming audience, right? Like we're so tapped in, we can call BS when we see it. And so doing stuff like that, I think stays fun, stays relevant, stays ahead of the curve. You guys have also done some stuff in VR recently too, right? There was a major activation that I
doing
saw
VR?
recently that you guys were doing.
Yes. I think this is, to your point on, or the conversation we've had just on building the brands, building the extensions of the brands, thinking about the IP, not just in the game launch. That's really easy to do, but how do we really build these as brands that are relevant and can connect to consumers? And so we were going back to Gamescom this year with our partners at Xbox. And we had a big space for Warcraft. And typically we go in, as we did with Diablo, you're doing kind of gameplay, first tests at kind of new pre-release content. And we thought, what if we did something for Warcraft that was more focused on the brand?
Yeah.
And we actually created a VR experience. It was almost a ride at Gamescom, where you got on this ride, you put on the VR headset, and it was called Escape from Dalaran. And you were on a dragon riding through and, kind of part of the game. It felt really immersive.
Yeah.
And the lineup of the game for this experience was, we had to cut it off at a 4-hour wait, something like that. The line was kind of curving out the door. But going in, we really weren't sure what the response was going to be.
Yeah.
Right? It was sort of this feels new, this feels different, this feels special. It feels like a really great way to really
It'd be different to do
reconnect
that,
with
VR,
the game and
for
frankly,
something like
the
that.
franchise and the characters and the things that we know that our players really love. And so to see the response was epic. In fact, the Prime Minister of Germany, came through and played. He was on the front page of I think every newspaper in Germany. We also front page coverage on Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
And so it was a really great reception that then, it's just, I don't believe so much in, it's a playbook that then we have to go replicate for everything. But I think it was a good example of we can actually step outside of the game in those traditional ways.
Right.
For things that are more brand experiences, especially with something like Warcraft, that really arguably is, one of the biggest fantasy brands in the world.
And it's funny because it really goes to streaming and creating some show or some film
Exactly.
based off of your game titles, but it seems as if your idea around gaming IP, especially as it relates to Blizzard and its titles, is more about world building. It's what is the YouTube show that we're going to develop? How do we show up on TikTok? How do we work with creators in Asia, in South America, in North America, et cetera?
Exactly what I
So
said. Just bringing up what
I
she
guess
was
as
saying.
we slowly start
Marketing.
to wrap this up, can you maybe talk a little bit about some of the things that you're excited about in terms of the worlds that you're building within Blizzard?
Things that we're excited about. Well, you talk about the thing that we care so much about is that it's not a retelling of the game. It's not some kind of, reinterpretation. that it's really an expansion, an extension of things that you can't get into
Which is
the
what I
game,
said
Yeah.
right?
before.
And so
It's
that
just
might be,
adding
linear
on,
storytelling,
not
and
trying to do
certainly
the same
we're
thing over.
exploring
It's hard to
TV
do
and film
nowadays, though,
for all
for
of our
games.
franchises. I wish I had something
Everything's
to,
basically thought
announce
of
for you
done.
currently.
No teasers, no.
No teasers at the moment that we put on that garnered tens of millions of views, right? And we still get a lot of
Just
requests
caring
for
about the
the
marketing
next.
more or less. They just care about the marketing.
What we're
by the
seeing is a
sound of
very
it.
different cohort of players
Hmm.
that have never touched the mainline games, and that's really
Adding
exciting
to the
to us.
quality.
Yeah. And because community, as we obviously everything we talked about, from community to live events to new technologies to YouTube to TikTok and players, etc. What are you excited about, especially in terms of marketing?
Oof, man. Application, often teams are looking at their set of research and insights and data. But the nice part is we try to keep that centralized so that we do have a central source of information,
Yeah.
because it can get really bifurcated really quickly. And especially as we're thinking about global audiences, it's really important to have that
Yeah, they're
source of
trying to
truth,
expand it
be
across
really,
the world,
really,
so that way there's more
firm.
players.
Nice.
Trying to adapt
Okay.
to each region, basically.
And so that's really important to us. We spend a lot of time. We have teams that are really dedicated to it.
And this is something
Hinges on our ability to be global, and that means accessible language
Yeah.
as much as accessible.
Just trying to make it so
being able to play
everyone
the
can
game
enjoy
in
it.
whatever capacity you want. And so
Make
that's
sure the
really important
languages
to
are
us. We
correct in
spend a lot of
each
time.
part
We
of
have
the
teams that are
world.
really dedicated to it.
And this is something
Yeah.
you mentioned to me as well, is that at Blizzard, you guys have dedicated teams to figuring, or you have teams that are so invested in localized communities that they're trying to make sure that games in the different languages or how it shows up in different markets really resonates with the local market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think about it as how can Diablo feel as much like a German game as it feels like an American game, as a US game, right? And that the way you do that is through really great localization.
Data. And as a follow up to that, what is a seldom used but very useful metric that you found at Blizzard that you wish other companies would also look at when it comes to like in-game success?
Oh, good questions. So yeah, I know it's hard to parse through the volume of feedback, right? One of the things we look at that I think every
Probably
company
a
should look
lot of
at is
feedback.
NPS, which is your net promoter score.
That's why they
That is
expanded
the
to
baseline for
the
which you
creators and
understand, is your game
streamers.
resonating? Do people want to play
Let
it?
them
Will
be
they
a
tell their
part of it
community
before they
friends
actually
about it?
launch it to get
And
their
that's a
criticism.
really good litmus
So that
to
way the
understand
creators and
where
that
you
can
need
see what it's
to,
going to be like,
go and
and
do
if
some
it's going to
work
be good
to
or not.
understand better.
They'll have a
And then
good
we all,
word
as
with
we
the
talked about a little
creators.
bit, are going into our different, disciplines to
Smart
go
to do.
do a little bit deeper on that research to
A
understand
lot of creators have
what's
a lot of
resonating,
hold
what's not
nowadays, so
resonating, what characters kind of
a lot of people
matter and
don't realize
matter,
that
or
creators
matter
know a lot.
differently, to be able
Streamers,
to kind of hone in on
content
everything
creators,
from story
so
to
on
game
top, but not the
mechanics.
creator of the
And then on the
game.
marketing side, it's really important that we understand who we are trying to communicate with and what we want them to do with that information, right?
All right, skip to the end of this one because
We're maybe
it's
not
about
getting
it.
right from a game mechanic or from a marketing standpoint, and we'll right size that and making sure we're not over indexing in things that are just a little bit noisy.
Great. I think that's all the time we have for questions. So once again, I want to thank you, Monica.
All right, so that was basically it. They're just talking about where they're expanding to, what kind of platforms they're trying to expand to, what generation, so Gen Z more or less, because they're the higher percentage of groups that are playing these games. 250 million players for Blizzard is absolutely insane. So that was CES Gaming IP though. So just a little bit about marketing, and that's about it really. Not much, improvement. They're not going to give any teasers on anything like that, unfortunately. So if you're a Blizzard fan, let me know in the comment section below. If you like to see other videos like this, let me know. I could download some games in that, show you how to overclock a PC to play these games better too. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment.